change on coastal heritage and livelihoods that we have witnessed over these past 2 days, and for those who have visited the exhibition today, will be able to know what exactly the message that we're trying to send forward today. And this will also be a very good guide for our final deliberations on the message that we want to send out. I strongly believe the panelists shall deliver stimulating discussions and will enable us to be able to identify gaps where we need additional efforts to put us on track so that we're able to meet the global challenges caused by climate change. We may not have all those people with us here today, the people that we want them to hear our message right in this room physically, but we know that because our messages are being recorded online and streamed live, this message will reach out to all those audiences, and including the delegates for the next COP26 meeting that is planned in Glasgow. Ladies and gentlemen, mine was to deliver a welcome note. Let me reiterate the pleasure of having you all with us today. We look forward to the comments both online and even though for those that will be delivered present here physically. I've also been asked by the MC to welcome the British High Commissioner to deliver his keynote speech. So with this comment, I would like to welcome Your Excellency to come and speak to the audience. Would love to hear from you. Karibu sana.
Asante sana, Rose. Mabibi na mabwana washiriki wa heshima, habari za asubuhi. Nimefurahi sana kuja hapa leo kuhudhuria hafla hii muhimu juu ya mada ya mabadiliko ya tabianchi. Lakini kama ulivyosikia Kiswahili changu sio kizuri sana, kwa hivyo nitaendelea kwa Kiingereza. Thank you. I want to start by saying what a great place. To come here on a Sunday morning and be invited to talk to all of you in such a brilliant setting on such an important topic is an immense privilege. So, asanteni sana. Thank you. And let me say and acknowledge the presence today of the various dignitaries, including a representative of the district authorities, Fulgence Cassian. Thank you for being here, sir. Thank you. Thank you also to Dr. Rosa Paul, Principal of Humanities, and thank you for your very warm words of welcome. Thank you particularly to Dr. Ichumba for giving me such a great tour of the exhibition just a little while ago, and of course thank you to you and your colleagues for everything you've done to make today possible. And also a special thank you to my ATIA and my British Council colleagues. Can you please stand up? I want to give you a round of applause for doing such a brilliant job. Thank you. And to the young people we have, the students and young people we have here today, Hongera Sana, congratulations. My 20-year-old son, if I ask him to do anything on a Sunday morning, I'm in trouble. So congratulations for being here today. Thank you. Okay. So this weekend in the UK, world leaders, more than 120 world leaders, will gather in the city of Glasgow in Scotland for what will be the most important international conference on climate change since 2015. And with current global efforts to reduce emissions falling well short, I mean really well short, of what is needed to prevent catastrophic levels of climate change, we need those leaders who are gathering in Glasgow to go there and dig deep to close that gap between the current level of action, which is not enough globally, and the action required. It's a big gap. We need them to close it. And youth, the voice of youth in recent years has been absolutely critical to generating that awareness at the political level. And I'll say a word about that in a minute or two. So thank you to all the young people here for playing a part in that. In its role as host of this gigantic meeting, the UK has, for many, many months now, been doing its utmost to help get leaders and governments around the world into a space where they are willing to close that gap together. And one thing the UK has done to lead is to lead by example by setting for itself, for the UK, the world's most ambitious emissions reduction target to date. And we have put that target, enshrined it in our law. So that means the government has to deliver on it. And if the government doesn't deliver on it, then the people can take action against the government through the courts, in effect. That's what it means to have this thing enshrined in law. Okay, but probably some of you are thinking, and I couldn't blame you for thinking this, fine, but haven't we been here before? This is the 26th so-called conference of the parties, the meeting of the UN, the countries under the UN, to discuss climate change. That means that governments have met 25 times previously to discuss climate action, and yet, as we already know, climate emissions, around the world continue to rise. The world, on average, continues to get hotter. So it's legitimate to ask, why should we expect more from this particular climate conference, COP26, than from all the others? If I was a young person, I would be asking that question. And this issue of climate change and global negotiations is something I've taken an interest in personally and professionally over many years. So I am myself no stranger to the cycles of hope and disappointment that have accompanied these big meetings in the past. But I want to try and offer you all today 6 reasons for thinking and believing that this time, this moment, is different. So let me go through those. I'll be brief. Don't worry. It sounds like a long list, but I'll get through it quickly. First, the science on climate change is now definitive. There is no residual doubt whatsoever among experts that burning fossil fuels like coal and peat and gas is heating the planet, causing more extreme weather and changing landscapes and ecosystems, including the ecosystem of your own coast up and down around Bagamoyo, which we saw in the exhibition. So governments around the world, they can no longer say, let's wait for the science to settle, because the science is settled, the jury's in. Secondly, this now settled body of science is telling us we're fast running out of time. Only urgent action now, this decade, to halve global emissions can keep global warming to within the range needed to avoid catastrophic climate breakdown. And that range, as many of you know, is up to 1.5 degrees centigrade of warming. So the governments around the world, they can no longer say yeah, there might be a problem, but it's okay, we have time on our side. Actually, the time is not on our side. The time for thinking about this is over. It's time for doing. Thirdly, climate change is already part of the lived experiences of millions and millions of people on every continent. Here in Tanzania, as elsewhere, communities are already suffering from forest fires, sea level rises, increased flooding, droughts, crop failures, and so on. Governments around the world can therefore no longer say, well, we need our people to be more aware of the problem if we as a government are to have their consent to act. People are increasingly aware. They can see the changes around them. So that is no longer an excuse for inaction. Fourth, more and more businesses and investors are turning their backs on fossil fuels and committing to reduce their business emissions to net zero. And the reason for that is that these businesses do not want to be on the wrong side of history, nor do they want to miss out on the opportunities of green growth. So with that in mind, governments can no longer credibly say climate action is bad for business and bad for jobs, because increasingly the evidence says the opposite. There's a fifth reason why things are different this time round, and that's the costs of renewable alternatives to fossil fuels are falling. Not just falling a bit, but they're falling dramatically. And it's now the case that across much of the world, it is cheaper to make electricity from the sun or from the wind or from tidal power or geothermal than it is to make electricity from burning fossil fuels. So governments can no longer say, I'm sorry folks, we hear what you say about solar and wind and so on, but we have to stick with coal because the alternatives are too expensive. Increasingly, coal is the expensive option. And that brings me to the last, but in many ways the most relevant reason for believing that this moment is different. And that is all of you, the young people here and around the world. To political and business leaders, to your parents, and to the older generations, you are rightly and increasingly saying, this is our future, this is our planet you're ruining, enough is enough, climate change is on you, time for talk is over, please take action. And we heard that message loud and clear in September this year at the United Nations Youth for Climate Summit in Milan, where it was uplifting to see Tanzania's own youth delegates to COP26 join in the chorus, if you like, urging global action and issuing their own very specific call for action focused on youth inclusion, raising awareness and promoting innovation. So to them, to all young people, including those here today, now making their voices heard, I say, as a member of the older generation, please keep going. This is about your future. This is about your planet. This COP26 is your COP. So keep demanding the action. I also want to say to young people, please be wary when you hear people suggest that responsibility for climate action rests principally on individuals. As individuals, it is true, we can choose to fly or drive less, we can responsibly recycle our waste, eat less meat, and conserve water. We can do all of those things as individuals, and those are positive choices, greatly to be encouraged and commended. However, at the global level, climate action, decarbonising the planet, requires entire economies to become decarbonised, and it requires levels of investment in adaptation that are huge, absolutely massive. So as individuals, we can do the right thing in our personal lives, But that is not going to deliver the large-scale change we also need to see. For that, we need governments and big businesses to act. And that is where COP26 and the meetings like that come in, because this is the forum, this is the framework through which that global government and big business action will emerge. The main goals of COP26 are to secure enough emissions cuts from around the world to keep that 1.5 degrees C goal, which I mentioned a little while ago, to keep that within reach. Secondly, to mobilize $100 billion a year of financing, climate financing, to enable developing countries who are often bearing the brunt of climate impacts to adapt. And thirdly, to ramp up international cooperation, including on things like technology transfer, deforestation, and carbon markets, the tools and the range of issues that where cooperation around the world could make a much bigger difference to efforts taking place within individual countries. Achieving this, of course, is not going to be easy in COP26. I'll be clear about that. And there are understandably concerns about whether the planet's big emitters will bring enough to the table in Glasgow. But it's also the case that in the months leading up to this meeting, we've seen many, many countries step forward to make bigger commitments on emissions reductions than previously, and bigger commitments on climate financing. And we're seeing big businesses also increasingly stepping up to say our businesses will achieve net zero emissions by this or that date in the future. And just recently, it was very welcome news that China committed not to finance any more coal projects overseas around the world. Very positive indeed. So some things are happening that we can feel positive about. We should be particularly positive about Tanzania and the government of Tanzania's approach here. Under the leadership of the President Samir, the government has substantially increased its climate ambition through the so-called nationally determined contribution, which is the formal commitment, if you like, that countries make to the UN on climate. And in increasing that level of ambition, Tanzania and the government are strengthening Tanzania's hands in relation to demanding more action from rich countries and in terms of attracting and pulling in international climate financing to help Tanzania develop and adapt in the coming years and decades. So my congratulations to the government of Tanzania for its efforts in this space. So the trajectory, the overall path on global action it's upwards, right? It's going up. But we're not yet where we need to be. Major emitters will in particular need to go to Glasgow and dig deeper and offer more, particularly on emissions reductions this decade. Because without those, it's very, very hard for us to stay as a planet within that 1.5 degree margin. And with climate action a top priority for the UK, we, partly because we're host, but actually partly because for many, many years now, the UK has taken a very forward-leaning approach on reducing its own emissions and trying to encourage that action from around the world. The Prime Minister, the UK Prime Minister, and everyone behind him will continue to do all they can now during COP26 and afterwards to raise ambition around the world further to deliver those extra emissions cuts that are needed in this decade. So those are my 6 reasons and my thoughts around the COP26 to offer you this morning. Let me, since this is about youth and the voice of youth, let me finish in the words of you know, that remarkable, absolutely extraordinary, powerful young voice on climate action, Greta Thunberg. And she said not so long ago the following: adults keep saying we owe it to the young people to give them hope. But I don't want your hope. I want you to act. I want you to act as if the house is on fire, because it is. So I hope every world leader going to Glasgow this weekend for this big conference makes the journey and does so with those powerful words of Greta Thunberg ringing in their ears, because this really is the time to act, and the planet needs this conference to deliver something special. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's stand up. Round of applause for His Excellence for a lovely speech. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's sit. And now, the time which we were waiting for is here for the panel discussion. We'll be having not less than 65 minutes for the panel discussion, whereby we'll listen to the panelists on issues concerning climate change, youth, and climate change in Tanzania, as well as you will also get time to tell us your views on this very important issue, as the British High Commissioner has said in front of us a few minutes ago. And let me, first of all, to introduce and welcome our moderator for the panel discussion. Our moderator today will be the senior lecturer from College of Humanities, Heritage Studies, and he is none other than Dr. Elgidius Ichumbaki. Dr. Ichumbaki, you're welcome. That will be our moderator today. And can I get help from our technician, please, sound technicians, to remove this microphone to the panel? Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ichumbaki. We'll be having 4 panelists. And the first panelist Okay, our first panelist is coming from National Environment Management Council, and she is the manager for environmental research and coordination from NEMC. And she is none other than Ms. Rose Mtui. Ms. Rose Mtui, you're most welcome here. The first seat there. Our second panelist is an assistant lecturer from Aquatic Sciences and Fisheries Technology at the University of Dar es Salaam. He is Bahati Mayoma. Bahati Mayoma, you're most welcome here. Thank you. Our third panelist is an advocate and poet, Ms. Aisha Kingu. You're most welcome. That's your seat. You're welcome. And our last panelist is a historian and PhD candidate from University of Basel in Switzerland, and he is Francis Daudi. Francis Daud, You're most welcome. And I think very soon you'll be called a Dr. Daudi. You're welcome. Now, for the next 65 minutes, we'll be listening to the panel and we'll get also your views on this very important issue on youth and climate change in Tanzania. Vijana na mabadiliko ya tabia nchi. Dr. Ichumbak will lead us in this very important and lovely panel discussion. Dr. Ichumbak, now the floor is yours.
Thank you, MC, Dr. Egbert Mkoko. And I have been given the amount of time which is less than 1 hour, or approximately 1 hour, to moderate this event. And I look forward to hear from the panelists. I think we have a quite exciting team, very experienced advocates, very experienced discourers, and quite engaging young people with huge history on climate change and environment. But before I do that, I request to make one assignment, that we have consent form on the paper, the panelists. We have this form here, which we seek for your permission to take photographs and use them where necessary. So I kindly request you to feed them and submit them. So the same applies to members of the floor, that this small form here is the consent form, so that we can get your permission to use your photographs, images, and voices at some point. I should also mention that our event and discussions, they are being aired live. We have a number of young people listening to what we'll be talking today from within Tanzania and beyond. So please, we also seek your permission that the camera is on and everything is being streamed live. So I would go straight to my panelists. Bahati on further right, and Rosie next to me here. On my left, there is Aisha Kingu, an advocate and poet, and we have Francis Daudi, further left. All these people, as I said, they are quite respected, and we expect to learn a lot. So maybe I will begin with Bahati, and it's a good thing to meet Bahati here again, because when Bahati was doing his master's degree in Denmark, that's the time when I was doing my PhD, and we haven't met for almost quite some time. So I'm glad that some of the climate change issues that he was teaching me when we were in Denmark, they will be shared with you today. Maybe, Bahati, to begin with, we have been hearing a lot about climate change from different people. We heard this morning from the commissioner that the world leaders are struggling to get millions and billions of dollars and pounds to tackle climate change issues, but not sure if we know what does this concept climate change mean. So if you can take us through that in 5 minutes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. And without wasting time, may I use this opportunity just to give you a small lecture within a lay language so that everybody can understand. So climate change, generally speaking, we say is a long-term shift in weather conditions identified by changes in temperature, precipitation or rain, wind, and other indicators. And in the context of aquatic environment, just a few meters, we are sitting a few meters from the ocean, the other indicators might mean or could mean pH change and salinity changes. These are also indicators of climate change when it comes to the aquatic related studies. And this is according to the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change 2014. This is how they defined it. So climate change can involve both changes in average conditions and changes in variability. And this could also include extreme events. The other thing which you should know is what are the factors behind climate change? Is it a natural or human-induced scenarios? The answer is both. That means both human activities and natural events can be source of climate change. And out of these two reasons for climate change, human activities are now believed to be the main determining or the main factor which is causing a lot of variation which we are seeing at the moment. In addition to this one, and something which I should not forget to mention, probably the moderator will ask in the future as we go on, we are now also starting to see issues which were not mentioned in the past, which are now becoming very clear. For example, very few people have been mentioning, for example, the issue of plastic in connection to climate change. And for your information, 7% of global oil production is used to produce various items, various plastic items. And the youth are the main reason for the plastic, you see, because of this modern lifestyle of, fast food, takeaway, and something like that. So we are also part as youth to be blamed. What can be done to reduce this problem with climate change? There are various theories, but in fact, the major gas which causes global warming, which lead to climate change, is carbon dioxide. There are various gases, but carbon dioxide is believed to be the main determinant of what we see. And there are various means of reducing it. So one of the solutions could be reducing the issue of carbon dioxide. So briefly, I would say, just for the purpose of introduction, this could be enough. Then we'll allow more questions as we proceed. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks very much, Bart. My mother is 72 years old and is really in the rural village. Can you help me to tell her? She's just here following up. Can you help me tell her what does this really concept mean in a mere person's language, apart from the carbon dioxide, the gases that you have been talking about? Like, I feel hot. Is that what climate change means?
Yeah. In fact, for this old mother who is sitting in the village or anywhere else, climate change means this variation in the event which we have been seeing in the past. For example, we normally associate climate change with either rise in temperature, especially in the temperate region. Temperate means in cold regions. We can also associate climate change with seasonal variation. For example, the rainfall. Sometimes we used to see rain at a certain period of the time in the past. Now we see rain unpredictable. We cannot even predict. And this year, for example, already the Tanzania Meteorological Agency has already informed the public that there could be some delays in the rain season this time. And this means for this old man or woman who is sitting anywhere in this world, he will be surprised because at this time of the year, 20 years or 30 years, probably it used to rain, and now they see that these things are changing. So we associate climate change with an extraordinary scenarios which we are seeing, extremes which we are seeing at the moment, which were not used to be happening in the past.
Yeah, thanks very much. And probably I should come to Rose now, that we are hearing a lot about climate change, and I'm not sure if we as a country, Tanzania, can speak about climate change, whether it exists, and if there are some indicators that we can point fingers and say, this is 1, this is 2, and this is 3, and it tells us about climate change. Please.
Yeah, thank you, moderator, for giving me this chance, and thank you all participants. Yeah, as I have introduced myself, that I'm coming from the National Environment Management Council, and as we all know, the council deals with all environmental management issues in the country, but we are also under the Vice President Office, which is our mother ministry. Just to introduce the background a bit on how we are coordinating issues of environment, including the climate change. We have Environmental Management Act of 2004, which has sections particularly to govern and manage climate change issues in the country. For example, Section 74 on protection of the atmosphere, Section 75, measures on climate change issues, and also control of gaseous wastes, Section 130 to 132. We also have other strategies and also policy. Actually, we have the policy of 1997. We have the National Climate Change Strategy of 2012, and without forgetting also our counterpart Zanzibar, they do have also a climate change strategy. So we all use these strategies, plans, and acts to govern or to control the climate change issues in the country. And Tanzania was also the first country to launch the National Integrated Coastal Management Strategy, which has some component on managing climate change issues. And also we have the National RED Strategy, the reducing emission from deforestation and degradation. We have this strategy. So we have all these strategies and acts to manage and combat climate change in the country. What is obvious about climate change? As we are managing the environment, the climate change issues in the country, we have seen shoreline erosion all over the country. In Dar es Salaam, specifically Kunduchi Beach, and we have the first victim hotel, Africana, which disappeared, completely disappeared in the past. It's just next to Kunduchi Beach, White Sands. So that are indications of shoreline erosion, which are the impacts from climate change. We have coral bleaching. We normally do assessment to study trends of coral reef. Coral reef in Swahili, matumbawe, coral reef. So the trend of coral reef, the first worst impact was 1998 during the El Nino conditions in 1998. But in 2018, we had also a severe coral bleaching across the country. So we do this analysis, and they are very much informing us how climate change is impacting our resources in the country. Now we also have impacts of inundation. Inundation of low-lying coastal areas, like in Tanga, even in Dar es Salaam, Mbweni, for example, inundation of low-lying areas. We also have saline intrusion. We did a lot of research and we found that if you drill, for example, a bit far, like in town here in Bagamoyo, you find water. If you drill to get water, you find water, but it's saline, salt intrusion in the coastal areas. So those are the indications that climate change is impacting our resources, is impacting our areas in the country. But as my colleague has mentioned, elevated levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, elevation of these levels actually impacts our water, our resources, because when elevation of carbon dioxide is high in the atmosphere, it also dissolves in the water column. So it makes the water more acidic, and now the carbon-forming organisms, they are affected. So those are just some of the impacts that we have seen in the country, and we are still doing some analysis to know more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rose. I think we will have a couple of questions later, and actually your comments makes me think more about this image at the background. This is a medieval building from Kirwa, which was built in the 16th century, and now almost half of it is gone. And it's gone because there is this swash and backwash movement of water, which is eroding a large part of it. And I don't think when it was built straight on the shore. It must have been very far away from the shore. And that means there is this rise in sea level, which might be partly caused by climate change. But we can conclude from your own comments that certainly climate change is real and it occurs, and therefore we really need to do something. But I wonder if the youths who are gathered here have any voice or have any role to play in matters regarding to combating climate change issues. And I would therefore request Aisha Kingu, who is an advocate and a poet, and I have read some of her poetry which are quite interesting on climate change. And I think she probably knows these things better than I do. But my question is whether the youths have any voice and role to play in tackling the climate change impacts. Karibu.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you all for this opportunity. I would say yes, and I would still say no. So I would say that we do have the voice. Me being here today, representing other youth, speaking on their behalf, we have been given a voice. So they are hearing us, they are hearing our words, they're hearing what we have to say. But we have also seen there are different forums. For example, UNICEF has Voice for Youth. Youth have been given various opportunities to voice up, either write articles, give different artistic works just to present whatever they have about climate change. Not only that, just the guest of Hannah said that Tanzania had an opportunity. A young female represented Tanzania in the Youth Climate Change Forum. So we have seen that we are being given voice to say or to contribute on climate change issues. But then, dear youth, it's not enough. I think we need more. If we can write, for example, myself, then I need to write more about climate change. If somebody can sing, then sing more about climate change. If you can dance, then present it or present any artistic work just to make our voices being heard more, just to make more noise that yes, the house is burning. The climate health is deteriorating. So we need to do something about it. And when it comes to what role do we have to play? I think we have a great role to play in the society. And for example, we need to join various groups. For example, the students invited here today. Go back to school, form different clubs, form different groups, together as a team, speak about climate change. Say something about climate change. But not only that, if we can organize cleanups, for example, along the beach, it was also done by the organizers. Let's do more of that. Let's plant more trees. Let's be friendly to the environment so that we can tackle the problem. But that's not enough. If we see that there are things that are done and they're not good for the environment, let's report about them. Illegal activities. Let's report about it, or let's speak out about it. Not only that, another role that we can play in the society is move together as a team. We cannot do this alone. So to the youth, don't think that probably by yourself you can organize or collaborate everything by yourself. We need to move together as a team, speak in one voice, even if we have been given an opportunity, but sometimes you also need to create our own opportunity. So as much as we are struggling to take care of our health, the environment health is also important. We can be fine, but if it's not fine, then it's our planet. Where are we going to live? So dear youth who are inside here, I motivate you, I encourage you, including myself, let's keep voicing up. It's very important.
Yeah, thanks very much, Aisha, for saving us from time, but for going and being very straight to us about the role that we need to play. So Francis here doing his PhD at the University of Basel, but also a historian. And last time I met him, we were somewhere working on a project to try to rewrite the history curriculum from our own perspective, rewriting history from our own perspective. That's when we met, and his ideas was like, we really need to teach what we know, to learn what we understand one another. And when we were discussing that, I remembered one story from my colleague in Nigeria who said when he was in her grade 1, he learned A for apple, but he couldn't see apple until he was 35. And he learned I for ice. No, he learned S for snow, and he couldn't see snow until he was 40-something, doing his PhD somewhere. So we're thinking, what kind of narratives that you could learn from our own perspective? And probably I was thinking climate change is probably falling within the same context that we are discussing about climate change, which is not within our own context, within our own livelihoods. And probably we should let those people who are doing meetings and conferences about climate change continue. Now my question is whether those meetings have been helpful and we really need to keep on listening to them, and we should expect something new which we haven't heard for the past 25 meetings. Francis, please.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to appreciate organizers and Dr. Ishumbaki and all other previous speakers. Are we learning from the past? The answer is no. Why? Because there is this narrative that history repeats by itself. It's not true. We human beings, we repeat the same mistakes. And that's the reason why we are gathered here today, just because we were repeating the same things. Let me tell you one thing. Since 1992, when the first climate change conference held, and a lot of countries, almost 129 countries, committed to take action to mitigate, to take measures to mitigate with climate change risks or catastrophes. Until today, almost 25 conferences held, but there is no any strong action taken by the government. But this time now, I think it's high time. And I do expect there will be some kind of new outputs. One, like others they have already mentioned, we expect the rise of, the collection of what we call it climate finance. And this is very important because we in third world countries, we are more affected by the climate change. And another thing, and therefore we need financial assistance, financial support in transition into kind of renewable energy and other frameworks. The second thing, which I think it's a bit different, we're expecting this year, is strong political commitment. Strong political commitment. You're probably aware that in recent years, we have a popular leader who are not believing into issues of climate change. Like we know there are some politicians who said climate change is some kind of myth. So now, I think this time around, we are going to see a very strong political commitment towards climate change, the issue related to climate change, including reducing emission of carbon and so on. So that is my contribution on what are we expecting. What are we expecting now? The second thing now, the role which plays by historian into this discussion. In recent years, there is this emergence of new discipline, which is called environmental history. And now we are trying to collect different data from different angles and see how climate change affects societies, that is socioeconomic structures of our societies. And I was privileged to be part of one research group where we were investigating how climate change led to the land-based conflicts in Kilosa, Morogoro. So we were collecting different statistical data related to shortage of rainfall and so on. And we find out that one among the reasons for the scarcity of resources which led to the land-based conflict is climate change, the impact of climate change. So that is one thing. Another thing which we are now trying to do is to incorporate issues related to climate change into history syllabus. Like nowadays, you're probably aware of ice age, terms like warm, medieval, and so on. So this is only a step that we are taking to make sure that climate change is real, and to make sure that the climate change become part and the parcel of history. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think we have left some few minutes for the people to keep on discussing. And before I just throw questions to the audience, may I make one announcement that your smartphones should be used, and you are allowed to tweet and Instagram, and please, when you do, just hashtag COP26. We want them to know we are making something here, and we want them to listen. But also you can hashtag climate change is real, and hashtag take action now. So as you continue to hashtag, I request you to give your views. You have heard from my panelists here on matters related to climate change and the roles that we need to play and the messages that we need to share among ourselves. Now, I wonder if there are some messages from the floor here that we need to send out to our leaders or to the CEOs of community and non-government organizations, businessmen and businesswomen who are meeting over a number of days, I think almost 2 weeks in Glasgow, beginning next week. We should tell them something from this end. So please, there should be microphone. If you get the microphone, put up your hand and we will receive either a question for my panelists or a comment for the people, so that we do voice up to COP26 leaders and business men and women meeting beginning next week. Microphone, please put up your hand. Yes, please. You just state your name, where you are from, and straight to your point. We will be giving just 1 minute.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Paul Mgisha Musa. I'm a student in the Institute of Tasuba. Yes. I just want to ask the question. You know, when you're talking about this, you are talking about many people. There are some of educated people and non-educated people. And probably when you are talking about non-educated people, it would be many people, and they are leading the activities in the environment we are talking about. So how would you tell them, how would you explain them about the climatic change? You know, some of them are the fishermen, local fishermen, perhaps they would be causing the climatic changes, and some of them would be the local farmers. They are probably doing the activities nearby the lakes, maybe perhaps nearby the rocks. And maybe some of them, their buildings, their houses on the parts of the areas which are not good, and it would be the source of climatic change. So how would you educate them to understand that the climatic changes would affect them? And how would you explain them to understand that, okay, we are stopping to do the activities, and how will we start doing the other activities by not using the local activities, the local ways that which would affect the climatic change?
What would you tell them yourself? Just in one sentence, what would you tell them if somebody comes to you? I am working with lots of fishermen here, and we're discussing a lot, but I don't know what to tell them. So tell me, what should I tell them about climate change, briefly?
Probably for me, it would be difficult for them to understand me, because they would see that, okay, it's a young boy. But I hope for you guys, you would have the much more voice for them to understand. Okay, I will give the short example. You know, when I was from Bukoba, it came the big effect of the lake. I hope you guys, you heard about the Lake Victoria, the way it increased its water, and it probably brought a big change. Many fishermen went away, whatever. But the thing you can't understand, within 1 month, all of the fishermen who were from the lake, they probably came back. They started building their houses, whatever, and they were like, oh, this is just the issue. So they wouldn't be able to understand. So I would like to ask you, how would you raise your voice, you as the leaders, you as the people who you are learning this, for them to understand and get your point? Thank you
very much. I think we heard the questions. My panelists will respond to that. Please stick on the message that you need to send out. We really need to send out. Tell these people who are meeting in Glasgow beginning next week, what do we want them to do? What do we want them to discuss? What do we want to achieve with regards to this climate change? Yes, give him a mic, please.
Thank you. My name is Geoffrey Rucho. I'm the Executive Secretary of the Aquaculture Association of Tanzania, but also the Interim Secretary of the East Africa Aquaculture Association. I will definitely, this is just a contribution, but I would love to declare conflict of interest that I will stick on the issue of aquaculture, knowing that there's a lot of changes on climate, and this is widely affecting the coastal people and people that lives along the water bodies, talking of Lake Victoria, Lake Tanganyika, Indian Ocean, and all that. Looking at the trend on how these fishermen are suffering from the decline of capture fishery, which is affecting the global issues, not only in Tanzania alone. We are looking at the best option is to teach these people how can they really produce sustainably, but also in an environmental friendly way, because failure of doing so is the other way forward. Because what they will definitely do is they will use illegal nets, they will use illegal bombs and whatever that will affect the coral reefs and all that. So the best option to teach these people is how can they do sustainable aquaculture in an environmental friendly way, but at the same time supporting the community that is around these large water bodies to use the value chain that can be attained from aquaculture in order to get their daily sustainability. We are talking of food security, we are talking of preserving the environment, because these people most of them never went to school. So if you are talking to them about an alternative on how can they get their daily needs, they don't know that we can hatch fish, we can raise fish, and at the end of the day, use it as alternative source on how they can preserve the world. But as we do that, we are also preserving the ocean. Thank you so much.
Yes, I will just take one hand from this side first, and then I go to this side. Dr. Makoye, please.
Thank you very much. Just a little thing. Every time I attend this kind of meeting, I always hear people saying, these people. To tell these people. To ask these people, who are these people? And we add, not educated, these people. To me, sometimes I feel these people, we the people. Because His Excellency here talked about the fossil fuel. It's we people, not these people. We drive the cars from Dar es Salaam to here, all over there. We use charcoal in our houses, not these people. They bring it. We drive the cars, not these people, it's we. So I'm saying in this fight, we are all involved. So probably when I was listening to His Excellency Ambassador, I thought that the major culprits is we, not these people. Because whatever they do, they go and use bombs to bring fish. Who are buying those fish? It's we. They go and cut trees in the bush and make charcoal. Who are using the charcoal? It's we. So my point is just we should start looking at ourselves. Then we include these people. But I'm saying we have to look that all of us, we are part of the problem. So we need to look to ourselves and not just pointing finger to these people. Thank you.
Yes, I will just forward the microphone here. Okay. Dr. Rose, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for a very educative panelist. My message to COP26 is in 3 words: ownership and education. My call to COP26 is to come together and make sure that the problem of climate change for all the delegates at this meeting should all boil down to ownership and education. Support all the efforts to educate the masses, support the efforts of ownership, because at this particular point, it looks as if climate change is a construct that is being brought by outsiders. And I really thank Dr. Makoye talking about these people in differentiating it from we, the people. So I think the biggest problem is ownership. So how do we do that? Let us speak the people's language. Thank you so much, Francis. Aisha, for what you've said, and Rose. Actually, when you think about defining climate change, you notice that probably we're not defining it based on what we are seeing. I was excited by what Rose mentioned about the saline intrusion, that when people go and dig wells, the first thing that they get is saline water. So if that's something that people can see and it's right in their backyard, why are they not told that that's an effect of climate change? Because these are real examples. They can own up to it and see how they can improve their environment. Education. If we had a climate change alphabet, have we thought about that? Look at how we write our history. Maybe we need a climate change alphabet to teach children from a very young age and as they grow up. And when we use the youth, actually I think the youth is the best place to start. Because with the youth, they're the most active on digital spaces. They're most active even in physical spaces. Give them space, they will own the problem and they will educate others. So my message is that of ownership and education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Los. There is, I saw a hand at the corner there, just at the last corner, at the corner there. Yes, please. Sanitize microphone, and can you do quickly, please? Just introduce yourself, your name, and tell us what the message do you want us to send to COP26 delegates.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Eleanor Taro Koidion, and I'm from Haki Elimu and Journalist Environmental Association of Tanzania. I have a couple of messages, please. Message number one, it is important that everybody understands what is climate change, what is the environment, and what is environmental science. And that knowledge needs to be unpacked for different age groups, different societal groups, because we need to understand that different societies, different citizen development have different understanding. So it has to be unpacked in their cultural understanding, social understanding, age group, and other understandings. Number two, it needs to be incorporated in the syllabus in such a way that it is standing out and people understand that they are studying climate change and they are studying issues of environmental science, climate change, climate effects, what is the lifestyle that needs to be incorporated in order to address these issues, and how does every single person contribute to that, because it begins with myself. It starts with me as an individual and not them. In my own household, how am I, what am I doing to address this issue? So people need to understand. In our syllabus in Tanzania, it is told that issues of climate change, issues of environmental science are involved, and it is included. I tell you, it begins and ends in how to plant a seed and what it is to see maize grow out in the field. But what are the effects of the solar rays on our human beings, on the plants and on the animals, and other effects is not being taught. It is not taught also for the farms. We're talking about fishermen and farming, but how does that affect the entire chain of the products up to the export level? It's not being taught. We need to understand that. So my final contribution to this, as we go forward to Glasgow, let us address this issue holistically. Each and every minister who will be there, regardless of their portfolio, is responsible for climate change. When we're talking about construction, we need to understand what kind of material are we using when we construct buildings? What material are we cutting from the nature that will be depleting the nature? And how will it affect the solar system? Because there will be emission of certain gases and certain materials in the atmosphere. But then the population, because when we go into construction, we increase the population. How does that affect that particular area? What about disposal of the garbage and other waste materials? So it is quite a lot of things that we need to go about that. We're talking about science and farming new products, but how are those affecting the soil and products that come out of the soil? And I would continue talking more and more, but I think these few items are very important to be addressed in Glasgow, and that by the time that conference ends, every single person who attends that conference leaves that conference with responsibility on their shoulders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ellen, for such quite interesting comments and messages. More messages, please. There is a hand next to you. Yes. Just half a minute, please be brief.
Okay, thank you. My name is Sadiq Said Maslai from 6 Bagamoyo, combination EGM. My question is, most of our parents depend much on land as a main factors of production. They clear vegetation without plantings for their beneficial. And they believe nobody can change their mind. My question is, what should we do? Things which will be favorable to them, but it will be best for our target or intention. Thanks.
Yeah, so if we take that question to the delegates in Glasgow, they will ask us, what have you done? They will ask us, what have you done yourself? Maybe we should get some ideas from you. Just in a sentence, what should we do? What should we tell them?
Okay, thank you. For myself, I tried much to tell my father, please don't clear the bushes and trees. But he told me that, okay, my son, I understand you, but I need a work which will be best or which will be friend to the environment. So, my son, what could you help me that work? I say nothing to tell him because I'm nothing myself. But you have a voice.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Let's hear from this side, please. Yes. I see somebody from... Go ahead. 30 seconds.
Okay, my name is Mr. Sule.
Could you use the mic? They are sun-sized, so please feel free to use.
My name is Mr. Sule. I'm tour guide in Bagamoyo, but I also am a student of one among universities. I'd like to use Swahili language. Swahili and our honorables would like to...
Please go ahead, I will translate.
Okay, thank you very much. Tumeona kwamba mabadiliko ya tabia nchi ni mlolongo ambao ulianza tangia COP 1 mpaka for now we have COP 26, yani COP 26. Na zama zote hizo zinatumika katika kudiscuss au kujadili mabadiliko ya tabia nchi, na wanatoa meja ambazo zinapaswa kuchukuliwa na kila mmoja katika kupambana na mabadiliko ya tabia nchi. Tumeona kwamba mabadiliko ya tabia nchi yanasababishwa na sababu mbili kama ambavyo tulielezea dokta, ambayo ni natural na human, ambazo ni za asili, yani mabadiliko ya tabia nchi ya kiasili, kama ambavyo bahari inaanza kuchipua kwenye ridge na kusogea juu. Lakini kuna zile human ambazo zinasababisha mabadiliko ya tabia nchi kama kila siku zinafanyika katika maisha yetu, ikiwa ni pamoja na kilimo, viwanda. Lakini kuna wahusika wakubwa sana ambao wanasababisha haya mabadiliko ya tabia nchi katika dunia, in general dunia. So this is not a small issue, ni kitu kikubwa sana cha kuweza kukijadili, kwa sababu athari za mabadiliko ya tabia nchi ni kubwa sana. Hebu tuangalie tu baadhi ya athari za mabadiliko ya tabia nchi ambazo ni kubwa zaidi kuliko hizi za kupanda kwa viwango vya maji katika bahari. Kuna kwa mfano hali ya joto kali, tuliona Japani na sehemu nyingine, na inatarajiwa kutokea tena hali kama zile. Kuna hali ya mvua za kupitiliza. Kuna vimbunga, tuliona karibuni hivi tulikuwa na tishio la vimbunga vya Katrina ambayo ilikuwa inatarajiwa kuikumba nchi yetu. Lakini tuna matetemeko ya ardhi, moto ambao hawezi kuzuilika, unaweza kusababishwa na mabadiliko ya tabia nchi. Unaweza kutokea kwa mfano kwenye Black Sea, tunaona namna gani ambavyo ina heat, baadaye moto wake ukitokea itakuwa ni changamoto kubwa. Hewa chafu, kuharibika kwa mifumo ya ekolojia, tunaona bahari namna gani ambavyo plankton zinavyokufa na viumbe wa bahari wanakimbia. Athari hizi zinakumba kila mtu kutoka jamii ya chini mpaka wale wenye uwezo. Lakini tunaona muhamo wa spishi pamoja na magonjwa na kuongezeka kwa tindikali. Swali langu liko hivi. Ni immediate action zipi ambazo zinachukuliwa? kwa sababu kila siku zinazungumzwa, lakini ni immediate action zipi ambazo zinachukuliwa na mataifa pamoja na nchi zetu katika kukabiliana na hali kama hii?
So the main question is what actions are the delegates, the big nations and people from across the world doing to tackle climate change impacts? Sure. What concrete actions that we can point out? 1, 2, 3. I think that's our role here. So we really need to point out some of the actions that we need these people I have mentioned to act, that we have had you for quite some time, from COP1 and to COP25. So this COP26, as His Excellency Commissioner said, is all about we need action and no longer hope and some suggestion. I will take one hand there, somebody in the middle. And your question will be answered by my panelists and some people on the floor. Katikati pale, yes.
Yes, my name is Nyendo Kinyonga from Alvin University. I just add on that man.
Is Sule?
Yeah. I can say that we demand those who are most polluter to make a legally commitment, because we know on COP15 they pledge for $100 billion per year. But I don't think so if they are in place within the country, which is those implementation of NDC. So for this COP, we need the legally commitment for those who are most polluting the environment. Thank you.
That's a very short and bold commitment. Legal commitment to these people. Yes, I see a student at the end there, and those are the people we want to hear most. From Eagle Secondary School. Please tell us, which form are you?
From Form 6. My name is Oswald Nsislaus Moshi, and I have a question. Everybody has been speaking about the natural causes of these climatic changes, and including the human factors. But nobody has been speaking about the military tests, about the bombs they are testing on the seas, land, terrestrial, of which are actually destructive. For example, the one thrown by the Korea government, it was a nuclear test on 3rd September 2017. How are we going to stop this?
That's a critical question. That's a critical question. Excellent. Yeah, so my panelists will respond some of those, but members on the floor will also respond. I see a hand here. Yes.
Hi everyone, my name is Monica. I'm the Vice Chair of the Commonwealth Youth Climate Change Network. I have a question, 2 questions. One for Rose. You coming from the government side, you spoke of coral bleaching, salt intrusion. You also spoke of the elevation of CO2, and you also spoke of the rise in sea levels. You also spoke of shoreline erosion. As a baseline, do you believe and do you think that the government is effectively managing waste management, which is actually the root cause of all these problems? And the second question is to Francis. My question is, do you believe that the NDCs are going to be effective in light of COP26?
Thank you. I think my panelists have listed these questions, and we'll come back to you in a few minutes. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Isam Shani. I'm a PhD student from University of Glasgow. Thank you very much for extraordinary discussion from the panelists. I personally have a kind of a message. I'm a public health researcher. We have a lesson from the COVID-19 responsible to take action. If we cannot take action, we should be ready for the consequences of what we are doing right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are just approaching the end. I will take 3 last questions. Let's start from the director here from the House of Culture. I know you have some exhibitions showcasing climate change impacts. Please, what messages should we send to world leaders and business people?
Thank you, moderator. I like these two words, take actions. Take actions. I like those two words. But my point I wanted to make is about the council, the environmental council, that I would like to hear the strategies. If you could mention some of, like, this is one strategy that will go from this year to that year, so that we can understand. And the other thing I would like to say, I'm trying to be brief. The other thing I'm trying to say is that things are possible. I have seen you guys doing things, and they have been possible. And that's why I wanted those two words. You guys, you banned the use of plastics bags, and this thing has been possible. I heard you guys of the making Dodoma city to become green, and I saw the people like planting trees and all those kind of stuff. And I'm sure probably in 5 years or 10 years, probably Dodoma will become green. I'm not sure of that, but what I want to say is that I have seen some of the actions being made and becoming possible. So the question will remain to be sustainability, to make sure they are sustainable. So what I wanted to say is that if you guys, you could do the strategic plan, and we can see the actions, and you do actions, and you're following up to the end of its sustainability. I see things could be possible myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last two hands, one there in the middle.
Okay, thank you. My name is Barakalenga. Before saying, I would like first to send the message, then I will ask questions. My message to COP26 is that those Annex 1 countries, they should know that by financing us in adapting and mitigating to climate change, they are not giving us a favor, because they are the ones who caused this at first, at the most. They caused climate crisis at the first. And we are suffering the crisis we didn't create. So by financing us, that is not a favor. Again, I have, I think, two questions to our manager there from NEMKI. The first question is that, what are you doing to involve youth in addressing climate change issues? What are you doing to involve youth in addressing climate change issues? Again, is that, as you have said, that we have climate change, no, not climate change, Environment Management Act, which is addressing the issue of climate change. But the challenge is that we don't have climate change policy. How is Environment Management Act effective without the policy? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Wilfred Mwakabara, and I'm from Global Compact Network Tanzania, the UN Global Compact Chapter in Tanzania. So I have two good call for youth and businesses in Tanzania. And the first one is the climate situation is really bad generally in the world. So let us focus on setting the standard, the science target-based initiative that will allow progress in measuring. There are some businesses which have already started to make some commitment on reducing the issue of making zero emission, reducing zero emission in their companies, the businesses. So let us focus on this. Let us make these targets in our businesses so that we will help to cure our climatic situation in the world. And from that point, I have the second good call. Please, businesses and youth, please use this Global Compact Network Tanzania platform. This is a free space to access to the free training on different environmental initiatives. We have this 1.5 centigrade degree initiative, which was passed through under Paris Agreement in 2011. We are pioneering it. We are encouraging the business to take this commitment and make our planet the better place to be. Thank you.
Very much. We have the last speaker from this corner here. And I will come back to my panelists for 1 minute each.
My name is Victor Mwasere, director from an organization known as Ujamaa, Youth Economic Development Organization. I would like to thank the University of Dar es Salaam, together with the British Council, for the organization of this event. I have 2 issues to address. One, I would like to have the joint campaign, the government itself, the private sector, but also the society together to have a joint campaign that we can fight and make sure that we have a better environmental situation in our areas. On that case, I would like to have a joint private sector, the government sector, and use. The second point, I would like this environment impact issue should be taken to use as how we can change it to an opportunity. As we have seen, there's some waste and seas. Those materials can be used as raw materials in other industries. So this can help the youth to combat these environmental issues.
Thank you very much. So within these few minutes remaining, I will come back to my panelists. We have heard to the youth and other stakeholders on the kind of messages they are sending to the global leaders who are meeting beginning next week. And what I have learned from all of them, I can summarize in one sentence. I think they say, we have nowhere to go apart from the earth. We know there are a number of researches going on where people wanted to move from the planet Earth to somewhere else. But the youth from Bagamoyo, the youth from Tanzania, if I heard them correctly, it seems they have nowhere to go apart from this earth. So if there is something to do, is to fight and tackle climate change here on earth instead of struggling to move away from earth. What do you think, my panelists, and what are your final remarks? Bahat, please.
Yeah, thank you, moderator, for the opportunity. I agree with you that there is nowhere we can go, and I would like to encourage youth to take action. I know, for example, there are various programs along the coast to start with, where we encourage youth to take part in ecosystem restoration, sea grasses, for example. We also need